This week, I'm letting my boyfriend decide what I read. 16 years old, this book is brutal. I do think it's criminal to start a chapter in the middle of the page. Horror and I can't sleep at night scary. It wasn't like that. Then, oh, no. Hi friends and readers, another week, another reading vlog, and this one in particular I've been holding on to for a while, and that is that I'm going to let my boyfriend pick what I'm reading for the week. And I'll share some prefaces about my boyfriend picking what I read. We have been together for quite some time, and I say that not to say that that means he'll know my book interest. I know basically exactly probably what he'll pick for me, and that's because I'm going to give him the option to pick between books that are on my shelf that he's read, because I don't count those towards my physical TBR. They're his books that he picked to read, and then we just needed a place to store them, so they're on my shelf, and I'll show you what they are. My digital TBR, so I would let him scroll through my TBR on my phone and pick out a book, or just a random book that he wants to come up with. And I say that those are going to be his three options, and I'm almost 100% certain, having been together 7 years, he's gonna pick two books, and both of those books are going to be off the shelf that are books he's already read. In particular, he has read the Red Rising trilogy. He actually just finished the trilogy this week, and so I think that he has been for the last few weeks being like, you really need to read this, you really need to read this. So I'm sure one of the books will at least be Red Rising. He is also not like an avid reader, but over the last few months as I've been really reading, I think I encouraged him a little bit to try to pick up some books, and we started with Project Hail Mary because of the movie. He read that, and also he wanted to go and pick out like a Stephen King book from the local bookstore. He read that, so there's a chance we could be reading that. He was really into the Dexter show, so he has two of the Dexter books. And then finally, the Red Rising trilogy. I actually recommended those to him because he was trying to figure out, you know, what genre he might want to read. He had fun with Project Hail Mary, and I've seen Red Rising everywhere. I know we're gonna be reading Red Rising. It's just a matter of fact of, are we reading the first and the second book in the trilogy, or that book and one of those others I've already mentioned? You can see they are all right here on my bookshelf. He's in the other room right now. He's gonna come in here and pick the two books. I don't think he wants to be on camera that long, which, hey, I totally get. Let's see. This is Brandon. He's gonna pick either any books off the shelf that he's read, anything off my physical TBR, not physical, digital, if he wants to scroll through my TBR, or any random book he wants to pick, and he needs to pick two books. So what are you gonna pick?
I want to pick two books that I've read. So the first one I'm going to pick, Red Rising by Pierce Brown. Picking it because I just finished the original trilogy of these books and I thought it was super good. I'm curious to see what your opinion on it is going to be. And I'm going to pick my second book. It's going to be not the second book of Red Rising. I'm going to pick The Institute by Stephen King. This was the first Stephen King book I've ever read, actually the only. I thought it was really good, and I think the genre is a little bit outside of what you normally read, so I think it'll be fun
Both of these
to see how you like this. These are my two picks.
Oh no! I've never read Stephen King. Science fiction, I think. Definitely both of these out of my comfort. We're gonna give them a go. Alrighty, we have in fact started Red Rising. I will say I've still got a lot of the ways to go. I'm on chapter 10 and that's page 71. So I've read 71 pages and I plan to make a lot of groundwork in this book today. This is the first book that my boyfriend picked out. As I was saying before, he had been trying to get into reading over the last few months, and I told him while we were out book shopping for him that I see Red Rising all over the place. It is popular and often recommended, especially in the science fiction dystopian world, and I do actually think this is young adult. Let me fact check that. Oh no, just kidding. It is classified as adult but has a big overlap with young adult, and that's because our main character Darrow is like 16 when you start this book. So I see this book recommended all the time. I see this series recommended all of the time. However, science fiction dystopian is sort of out of my comfort zone, so when I'm picking it up, it's often for a video like like this where there's a theme, someone else is picking or something else is picking my read for the week, and not necessarily just because I gravitate towards it. However, I've heard really good things and the ratings on Goodreads are extremely high. This book is rated 4.27 out of 874,000 ratings. It is part of a larger world called the Red Rising Saga. And so while I recommended it to him, he ended up picking it up, which I'm so proud of him, reading it, and he's just finished the first 3 books in the series. Now, if you'll see on book number 1, it says book 1 of the Red Rising trilogy. However, there are 6 books out, and I think a 7th one on its way or being written and will come in the future. So I was a bit confused why it said trilogy, but there are 6 books. So I asked my boyfriend a little bit too. I said, does book number 3, since you just finished it, end in a way that you felt like that's the end of the series? And he basically said, not really. So I looked it up and it looks like it was just marketed originally as a trilogy to help with like the company purchasing the books from him, the author Pierce Brown, but was always intended to be a longer series than 3 books. And so far it has just been so fun. I'm only 70 pages in, but I read some yesterday out at the pool with my boyfriend there and then at home last night, which my boyfriend and I live together. So bouncing it off, it's like one of the first times that he has read something that I haven't and that he knows what I don't know. So he keeps asking me for updates and that has been fun. I love giving him the updates because I know nothing, and there are particularly plot reveals happening this early on that have been exciting for him to hear me tell him about, which is just fun. It's a great way to connect. I love this idea and I'm glad we did it, and I'm glad he's been reading recently so we could do it. And as I was also saying, I sort of knew that I needed to be ready to read Red Rising before asking him if he wanted to do this video, because I knew it would at least be one of the books. And I feel like I'm ready, but it has been a little bit tricky over the last few days to really get into the book. But I think I'm finally getting to a sweet spot where I am wanting to read the next chapter. So fingers crossed this week doesn't put me into a reading slump, because both of these books are just not what I normally pick up. We'll do a quick synopsis on what Red Rising is as someone who knows pretty much nothing. We are following Darrow, and Darrow lives in this world where the classes are sort of classified by colors. So Darrow is a part of the Reds, and then the Reds are like the lower caste system. And then you have all these other different colors, but the one in particular that's important are the Golds. They are top-notch. They are the elite of the society. They are not the common folks like the Reds. And Darrow and the Reds in particular are living on Mars. And I say on Mars, but really are living in Mars. They are trying to build a society, or at least they think they're trying to build a society where one day all of the rest of the folks can live on Mars. So they're basically underground, drilling holes, working, and trying to make Mars a livable planet for the other people in their society. In particular, this has been passed down by the Golds because the Golds are in charge and tell them what to do. And then where we are in the story now, and the last sort of, I guess you would say spoiler to the plot, but it's in the summary, so if you don't want to know what's in the summary, then maybe skip ahead a little. Darrow discovers that in fact Mars is already inhabitable. There are already people living on Mars, but this has been kept a secret from the Reds and the people working with Darrow and around Darrow. They didn't know that. They've been working all of their lives to make it inhabitable, but here we are. People are already there. Cities are already built. People are established there already. So now Darrow has to figure out essentially, you know, why are they lying and how can I infiltrate the Golds to figure out what's going on? So that sounds entertaining. If you like science fiction, if you're into dystopian, on the back of the book says it's reminiscent of the Hunger Games or Game of Thrones, then maybe this is a series for you to also pick up. All that to say, I'm gonna keep reading and see how we end up liking this. My boyfriend would really like that I read the rest of the series alongside of him. I don't know if that's going to happen. It really depends on how we feel about book number 1. I'm gonna update you later once I've got a good idea of what's going on and where it's going and how I feel, and maybe once I've finished it. I don't even remember the last time I updated, but I'm coming with a final update on Red Rising by Pierce Brown. And let's just talk a little bit about the story in the last 382 pages. Our main character, Darrow, every time I would learn more about Darrow and follow Darrow's life and what's happening in this book as he tries to infiltrate the gold and tries to essentially dismantle the power that the elite of his society have created and established. I just think back to the fact that Darrow is 16. This is a young teenager, a young boy, and all of the things that Darrow is doing across this book are absolutely insane. Yes, of course, dystopian world, fantasy world, whatever you want to call it. Of course, it's fiction, but still, 16 years old, this book is brutal. It was a lot more brutal and a lot more death involved in this book than I was anticipating. I don't know why, I just didn't have that expectation for it. And in this world where there are sort of factions and different classes of people, I thought we were going to learn a lot more about all the different colors or sectors like blues, pinks, yellows, all the other colors, you know, but we really stick to just knowing the red and the gold, the lowest and the highest. I'm imagining that that means other books in the series will dive deeper into all of those other facets of people, but this one not so much. And I think I said it earlier because it was on the back of the book. It says reminiscent of the Hunger Games and Game of Thrones. I have not watched Game of Thrones or read the books. Are they books? But I have watched and read the Hunger Games series. I can see how they are reminiscent of that, and I'm guessing that means that the Hunger Games came out first. When did this book come out? 2014. So this book's been out for 12 years. I wonder when the last one in the series came out. Let me know. And I kept thinking back to when Brandon read this book for the first time. He really didn't reveal too much. I am a romance reader, so really I had just been asking him, you know, is there any romance in Red Rising? And he gave an answer to that was really the only thing that I hung on to be on the lookout for in this book. And so I really didn't expect much coming into this. I had no clue really what I was getting myself into. When you finish this book, it certainly leaves the door open for another book, of course, because it's only book one of, I think, being 6 out right now. I myself am not sure if I'm going to pick up the next books in the series. I fear because they're so far out of my comfort that it could put me into a slump, but never say never. Brandon might be able to convince me to read them because he is already trying to get me to read them. It might be one of those things though where I just have him tell me what happens or we revisit at a later time. I know that I couldn't pick them up right now and safely make it out and want to keep reading. That sounds bad, and that's not because this book is not good. I'm gonna rate it a 3 stars, and for me what a 3 stars means is that I had a good time. I liked the book. It's just not my favorite and I didn't love the book. And for this one, it had nothing to do with the author's writing, the plot, or anything like that. It's more so just not a preference of mine to read all the time. Was I entirely ready to read Red Rising? We'll never know. If you have read the Red Rising series, please let me know if it's worth going into the second book, if you feel like things pick up in book number 2. I do kind of feel like Brandon said that he felt like things got a lot more interesting in the second book. So maybe. We have got to get going on our next book, which is already picked out, our first Stephen King novel. I'm gonna catch up with you later this week once I've started. So dark and gloomy outside. It's literally the middle of the day. I'm on my lunch break, but it's supposed to rain for like the next week, which is great. We need the rain, we need the water, but as far as the sun and the happiness and the warmth, not so much. And here I am to provide an update on the second book that my boyfriend picked for me to read, and that is The Institute by Stephen King. And I have made it what feels like halfway through this book, and it is a bigger book. And I thought it was just comical that I use my Lizzie McGuire bookmark for a book like this one. What I know about Stephen King and why my boyfriend picked this book for him to read, why I'm reading it now, I do think that as he was just getting into reading, we went and shopped the local bookstore and he wanted something psychological, something thriller, maybe a little bit of horror, and he thought that would be a genre he could explore to see if he was interested in it. And who does horror and thriller better than Stephen King? I don't know. I feel like Stephen King is a household name game for literally anyone ever, whether it's based on books or based on movies you've seen that are based off of the books of Stephen King. I think that it was one of the ones that were a little less intimidating in Stephen King's backlog because Stephen King has been writing books for forever. This book came out in 2019, so it feels more recent of Stephen King, especially for people who are reading and are in their 20s, whereas I think Stephen King's first book came out in 1974, and even still with this being 2019, Stephen King is releasing books to this day. I know one came out in 2025, and I think there's one set to release this year as well in 2026. Whew. This Stephen King book I had heard nothing of when we were at the bookstore shopping around. Again, it didn't feel as intimidating as, say, picking up something like It, which was massive. This book is 557 pages, and we're on chapter 20, but that's a little bit confusing based off of how this book is formatted. There are different parts. For instance, the first part of this book is called The Night Knocker. So every few chapters, you'll get a new part, and then chapters just start in the middle of a page. They are very short chapters, longer parts though. I do think it's criminal to start a chapter in the middle of the page, but then again, when you need to put down the book and there's just a chapter already there in the middle of the page, it makes it easy to drop it in the middle of reading. This book is adult horror, thriller, fiction. It feels a little psychological as well, but we'll see how it ends. And again, I'm going to introduce you to the book and all the information you would find in the summary or the back of the book or wherever you find that summary. We are following Luke. Luke is actually kidnapped in the middle of the night, and in the process of kidnapping Luke, who is a 12-year-old, very intelligent little boy, no one sees it. It's a very covert operation that has been completed many a times in many a different neighborhoods with many a different kids. When Luke wakes up, he wakes up in what he thinks is his room. It is built out to be exactly identical to his room back at home. He's very confused though because it's his room, but it's not his room. And as he exits the room, he walks into and realizes he's at the Institute. And when I say that Luke is a very intelligent kid, I mean highly intelligent. He still plays and acts like a 12-year-old, but he, as far as education and IQ, is way above a 12-year-old. His parents were considering sending him to college at 12 years old. When Luke realizes he's in the Institute with all of these other very intelligent, smart kids with special abilities, they come to find out that they are in the front half of the Institute. That's where they're all hanging around and completing these tests. And they also know that a back half of the Institute exists, but you don't want to go to the back half because it's this complete unknown. Once a kid goes to the back half, they never come back, so they don't know what's going on back there. They don't know much about why they're in the Institute, except for that all of the staff, the doctors, the caretakers are all in on this, and they don't know how this operation is being ran without other people finding out, and that they are being used for their abilities, but they don't know what their abilities are being used for. It is very horrible, and we are halfway through. I have no clue what's going to happen in the second half. I will say I am liking this book so much better than Red Rising. I know it is a lot easier to comprehend, to understand. There's not as many characters to learn. While there are a good bit of characters, it's all flowing so easily, and the imagery, I can immediately tell where I'm at, what it looks like, and what these characters are going through in the Institute, which is very different than what I was doing with Red Rising. It was so hard to picture that fantasy science fiction world as compared to this feels more like a real life world I can imagine already. Now, there was a part that you start out with in the very beginning that introduces a character, and I don't know how they fit in, so I imagine in the second half we're gonna figure out how that person fits into the Institute and Luke's life and what Luke is going to be able to do from here as he's stuck in the front half of this horror of a situation, nightmare Institute. I'm gonna update you once I finish this book and give you my star rating, and I think that we're doing better with my boyfriend picking this one over the last. I have just finished Stephen King, The Institute, and I don't know what I want to rate it. I think I'm somewhere in between a 3.5 star and a 4th star. I think I rated Red Rising a 3 star, and I definitely feel better about this book than I did Red Rising in that I felt like this was more of an easier genre to follow, or an easier book to follow. I kind of talked about that in my last clip, but I still don't know how I feel about the ending of this one, which is why I'm in between a 3.5 and a 4 star. I loved getting to know all of the children in the Institute and how they formed relationships and ultimately where their stories ended. I was just probably confused the later half of this book. As we try to resolve what is going on in here, there is a lot going on. The part in the beginning where it's a new character and you don't know how they fit into the story, you do get to see where they come into this. I wasn't necessarily disappointed by them and how they intertwined with the Institute, but I thought it was going to be something larger than that. I think honestly this book wasn't like horror, crazy scary. I think the scariest part about this book is to see some of the terrible things that other humans can just do to humans. For instance, kidnapping young children and putting them in an institute. And also Stephen King really interweaves things that are happening in American society that are scary, and seeing that come to life with these children and the reasoning behind putting these children in the institute. There are bits of real life pulled into there and some of the scary parts of life. This book questions those things and makes you think about those things, which is scary. But as far as like horror and I can't sleep at night scary, it wasn't like that, which I appreciated because I need to sleep at night. I do think that I will continue to try to read Stephen King books. If you know of one other than The Institute that you're like, that's a less intimidating book by Stephen King, let me know. I would love to pick up more. Honestly, I might do a week in the fall time reading only Stephen King. I will say this doesn't look massive, but it was 500 and something pages, and between this and Red Rising, I so closely could have put myself into a reading slump, but I knew that that could have been the problem with doing a video like this where my boyfriend picks books that are definitely out of my genre comfort. I did have fun though. Every few chapters, every few days, I'd be in this book. Brandon would ask me, you know, where are you at in the book? What's happening? And I think he liked knowing things that I didn't know. Also, somehow inspired him to read Beartown today, or this past week. So he was kind of reading a book that I picked for him, but not really a book on my shelf he hadn't read yet. So we were both kind of playing this game of where are you at and where are you at and where are you at, and it's just really fun to use reading to connect to the people around you, whether that be your boyfriend, your friends, or complete strangers on the internet. So I probably would do something like this in the future, maybe once Brandon has read some more things, or make him actually pick from my TBR. That's all. Bye for now.